Kevin, in Albany, New York, I heard a clip this week from Vince McMahon's old interview with Stone Cold on the WWE Network, and the comment seems to show Vince gave up on creating stars for ending the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. He makes the argument, if not Lesnar, then who? He says, we knew we didn't have anybody credible to beat Undertaker the following year or the year after that. So basically, he's saying that he couldn't build somebody up in 3 years' time who could be credible to beat The Undertaker. For a predetermined sport that the man controls 100% of himself, I found this wild. What do you think? You know, if you listen to The Undertaker, who has been making the rounds a lot recently, right, to promote the Last Ride documentary, we got more Undertaker interviews and podcasts and stuff in the last 3 months than we got in 30 years. If you listen to The Undertaker, when he answers questions about the streak, how did you feel about that? Were you in favor of it? How did that come about? And just watch him and just listen to him speak about it. You don't need to really read too much between the lines to see that even he thought the streak should not have been broken. It was not his idea. He said to Vince, are you sure you want to do this? Like, he was not at all convinced that it was the right move to make. Now, maybe later, if you would have waited, maybe eventually Undertaker would have found somebody that he thought could really benefit from it, and he would have been okay with it. But he clearly did not think that it was the right time. It was not the move that he himself would have made. It is not a move that I would have ever made. We got a memorable moment out of it, for sure. It's the most shocking finish to a wrestling match that I've ever seen. But even in the interview with Austin, you know, Austin, to his credit, when he was interviewing Vince, and I guess that interview was what was that interview, 2014? I mean, that interview's a few years old at this point. To Austin's credit, he pushed back on Vince McMahon when Vince was giving his bullshit answers, and he pushed back a little bit. And he said, you know, he's like, dude, you expect me to believe that it was Taker's call? And then Vince fesses up. He goes, no. He goes, it was me. It was my call. It was my decision. So it was purely a Vince McMahon decision, by his own admission. Vince McMahon may have been the only person in that company. He may have been the only person in that company. Not in the fan base, because there were plenty of fans who thought that The Undertaker should have lost, like in his last match, or the streak should have been broken, somebody else should have gotten the rub. You know, maybe not Brock, but there were definitely fans who were in favor of seeing the streak end. But in that company, I've never heard anybody who has ever been asked about this actually say it was the right move or defend Vince McMahon. Although if you ask Bruce Pritchard, I'm sure he'd defend Vince McMahon. But anybody else, I've never heard anybody else really come across as being a fan of that decision. And his comment is ridiculous. They did run with Brock after that. They did make Brock this, you know, unstoppable monster, which on the one hand made him very unique and made him very special. On the other hand, he was put over so strong, he was put over so dominantly that it killed much of the roster. Anybody who would have had any believability as a contender for that championship was basically killed. Because nobody was believable in the ring with Brock Lesnar. He was so dominant that nobody really came across as being believable when they were in the ring with Brock Lesnar. You know, that one F5, all it took was one, finished off so many guys who just, nobody felt credible after that. They ran out of people to put him in the ring with. So the idea that Vince McMahon looked at his roster and thought, you know, there isn't a single person on the horizon who I would trust in that spot, so let's just go with Brock. That was a product of him thinking that The Undertaker was retired. Vince McMahon believed that that was going to be it for The Undertaker. That's why he did what he did. The only problem is he forgot to tell The Undertaker that. Undertaker didn't think he was done. And he wasn't. As evidenced by the fact that it's been 6 years and he's still wrestling. That was WrestleMania 30. He just had, you know, a match with AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36. Which, Who knew? Turned out to be the best match on the entire show. But Vince McMahon thought that this might be the end, and he's an old school guy. You should put somebody over on the way out, so let's go with Brock. It was very short-sighted. Maybe somebody else could have been built up for that spot, maybe not. If Undertaker retired with the streak intact at WrestleMania, but then, let's say, lost and put somebody over in his final match at Survivor Series, the event where he debuted 30 years ago this year, in fact, to the day, that could have worked. That could have worked too. Maintain the streak at WrestleMania, but he still does the job on the way out. But this idea that he looked ahead, Vince McMahon looked ahead 2 years, 3 years, and didn't see anybody legitimate who could believably be the one to end the streak, is a very strong indictment, I think, of his own talent roster, if that's the case, and his own ability to make new stars. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There were a few comments that he made on that podcast that made me roll my eyes. Cesaro was another one. Don't even get me started on that. Or the stuff about people walking around. Stone Cold's like, I'm in the back and I see guys who are like walking around on eggshells and they're fearful for their jobs. They don't want to say the wrong thing. What do you have to say about that? I was happy to hear him bring that up to Vince McMahon. And do you remember Vince McMahon's fantastic response to that? Well, then don't piss anybody off, pal. I believe that was his sage advice to the roster. Well, then don't piss anybody off. What a great work environment that sounds like. Yeah, I wonder, if you did not grow up as a WWE fan, if you were totally new to the idea about what WWE even was, they had Tainara Kanchi, who was released. She used to be with NXT. And she was cut in the last few months. And by the way, she might be a good pickup for AEW if AEW wanted to take a look at her. But she gave that interview with I forgot the YouTube channel. And she talked about how somebody in WWE, I think it might have been Johnny Ace, I don't remember exactly who, but they saw her modeling photos. And they reached out to her about coming to train and work in WWE. She didn't even know what WWE was. She thought it stood for something that had to do with prostitution. So, imagine if you are somebody like her who had no concept of what WWE even was. You weren't a fan growing up. You don't even know what they do. You don't know what it stands for. Who in their right mind would want to work for this company? When you hear these stories about the work environment there and just some of the bullshit, my God. I mean, I guess every company... I shouldn't say every company, but a lot of companies have, people that you don't like or, a boss who's an asshole. You're afraid to say the wrong thing around them and people walk around fearing for their positions and people play politics. I mean, you can get that in any work environment, any big company. It's not exclusive to WWE. But the stories that have come out, sometimes about this company, if you're a talent and what it's like to work there, the pros and cons and stuff, I hear these stories sometimes. And then I see how they're classified and treated. And I'm like, who would want to work for this company unless you are just somebody who, ever since you were a little boy or a little girl, it was your dream to one day work in WWE and it was your dream to be in the main event of WrestleMania. Then I can understand it because you're blinded by it. I feel like they prey on people like that. They could take advantage of people like that and they know they can get away with it because it's their dream. Where else are you going to go, right? But if you're anybody else, why the hell would you want to work there? Oh my God. Because again, I get it. People grow up, they're little Hulkamaniacs, they're little macho maniacs. You're fans of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, and The Rock, right? You grew up during the Attitude Era or something. And those guys just felt like rock stars. Who doesn't want to grow up to tour the world and be a rock star, right? Who wants to sit behind a desk 9 to 5? When you could just go on the road and be a rock star and be on TV, if you make it. Very few people really, truly make it in the wrestling business. But if you are one of the lucky ones, right? Who wouldn't want that? I get that, but I do feel the company preys on people who kind of grew up on wanting to work there as a dream of theirs. I'm sure they get away with a lot of shit that they would not be able to get away with somebody who is just working there because it's another job, or, okay, yeah, this sounds cool. WWE wants to recruit me, some kind of athlete from another sport. Then they find out how things really work there. It's yeah, peace out. You people are nuts. You people are out of their minds. Now, working in management, I can understand. Working in management, I get. Some of the top executives there are millionaires. I mean, look at this lady they just hired in the last week or so as their new CFO. She used to work for that company, Etsy. $700,000 base salary. $500,000 in WWE stock. 401k. Yeah, not a bad package, right? If you're taking that position. I think that woman is the real WWE superstar. She's the real superstar. Sign me up for that. I'll take that.